Folks, everybody loses in this situation. I'll tell you what I mean and then get into the latest home prices and insights for York Region for week ending February 12th, 2025. When buying and selling houses, there's often the situation where the buyers, either when they're walking through the home before they put in the offer or during a home inspection, the buyers notice something that they want repaired or something that needs attention. And I've seen it where the buyers tell the sellers, whether it's in the offer or however they do it should be in the offer, that the seller needs to have this fixed before closing. It depends on what it is, but I've been on both sides of that scenario where I represent the buyer and I represent the seller. And I could tell you, it all depends on what it is. Like if the situation is, for example, there's something happening that's causing damage to the home right now, that absolutely needs to be repaired immediately, because between when the offer is accepted and closing date, there's going to be even more damage to the home. For example, maybe the home inspector notices that there's a leak coming into the roof, or there's a crack in the foundation wall and there's moisture coming in and homeowners are unaware. Well, that needs to be fixed immediately so more damage doesn't get caused. And that's almost always the responsibility of the seller at the moment to deal with that right away. And most sellers are proactive when it comes to that. Many times the sellers didn't even know they had this deficiency in their home, and they'll repair it regardless. They're just even sometimes happy that we brought it to their attention through the home inspection or whatnot. But there's other things, sometimes cosmetic things, other things that come up that the buyers want the sellers to fix or repair before closing. And when I'm representing the seller, almost always my attitude in those situations, it's not causing damage to the house right now, is to advise the seller. I'm giving you a pro tip here. To advise the seller, don't do it. You're better off negotiating some sort of compensation, and I will explain to the buyer side why it's better they do it. Because in those situations where I've seen the seller actually perform the repair or the fix, the buyer's just not happy. The buyer will complain that it needs to be done this way and it needs to be done that way, and you could have done it better, or it doesn't match the rest of the wall or the rest of the floor. There's headaches. There's almost always headaches when the seller does some sort of work that the buyer wanted. So my advice to the seller would be, negotiate a price, pay the buyer in a sense to do the work themselves, and you don't even have to think about it. You've got no more headaches. When I'm representing the buyer in that situation and the buyers say, Santo, I want them to repair this item before closing, that's how my conversation goes with the buyer. It's kind of like, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I can ask them to do that, but they've known about this problem and they haven't fixed it in, so much time. What guarantee that we have that they're going to fix it according to your liking? Like, they're selling and they know that in 1 month, 2 months, when you close, the seller's gone. They may just kind of give the impression and patch it up and not do such a great job. And you won't know until a few months after you've moved in there and the problem starts happening again. So I tell Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, why don't we kind of renegotiate some compensation for that fix and you take care of it. And this way you could guarantee the quality, you hire whoever you want. Maybe you plan it into some other renovations that you may be doing, as often is the case, and you get it sorted out the way you want. After all, you're the one who's going to be living in the home afterwards. Every time I do it that way, sellers are happy, buyers are happy. In most cases, sellers are willing to give away some money to have the buyer take care of it. In many cases, the buyers are happy getting compensation, and then the buyers take care of it because they can control the quality. It's a lose-lose situation where one person does the work, the seller, and then almost always the buyer's just not going to be happy with the quality of work that was done. So, giving you a pro tip, there's a situation that needs to be sorted out, negotiate a price, let the buyer deal with it later. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. If you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. If you want to speak with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, it's really simple. Below this video in the description is a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Now, let's get into the numbers. Here we go, folks. Let's take a close look at York Region. We're going to be focused on detached properties for Vaughan, Richmond Hill, and Markham. Richmond Hill average sold price way up here versus Vaughan and Markham. We will start off with Vaughan for week ending February the 12th. 30 detached properties sold. That's way above what we've been selling so far this week on a weekly, the previous weeks on a weekly basis. 30 is a lot. And when you kind of look back throughout the whole last year, like 30 or more are some of our busier weeks when it comes to volume and selling detached properties in Vaughan. So 30 were sold. 6 of those were at $2 million or more. Average sold price jumped up to $1,723,000. 1,723. It's a little bit lower than where we were this time last year, but rounded, it's a 0% change in price. Median price of 1,563 is 4% lower than this time a year ago. 30 were sold, 53% sold at list price or more. And of the 30 sales, that actually represents 9% of the active listings, of the amount of detached properties actually available for sale. 9%. It's one of the It's a higher percentage than we're seeing in a lot of the other areas out there. Months of inventory sitting at 2.6. Now, with the jump up in sales, I don't know if that's going to continue or it's just a weird situation. This 1 week, this is what happened. But we would have kind of expected months of inventory to be somewhere in the balanced market state, but it just jumped right down just because the 30 sold in 1 week. Here's Richmond Hill. 16 detached properties were sold. Half of those, 8, were at $2 million or more. Average sold price is over $2 million at $2,016,000. $2,016,000 is 3% lower than where we were this time a year ago. I say that's surprised because $2 million as an average sold price is already high. But it's lower than this time a year ago. The median price is 5% higher. 16 were sold. 31% sold at list price or more. Now, 16 sales represents 5% of all detached properties available for sale in Richmond Hill. And months of inventory sitting in a balanced market environment of 4.6 months of inventory. Here's Markham. 14 detached properties were sold. 3 of those were at $2 million or more. 14, kind of normal. We're not really seeing a big change in sales right now in Markham for detached properties. Average sold price is $1,744,000. 1,744 is 3% lower than this time a year ago. The median price is 4% lower year over year. 14 were sold. 64% of those sold at list price or more. Listings way up. And when we look at the sales of 14 sales, that represents 5% of all detached properties available for sale in Markham. And months of inventory sitting at 4.9 months of inventory. Here's a quick summary of months of inventory. Pretty much you're going to experience a balanced market, some pockets because of the home type price point, maybe some competition out there, and maybe you might find yourself bidding for properties. Other markets, other areas, other price points, properties are sitting there with lots of competition. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.